Alrighty, we are back for the week 10 reactions. Hope everyone had a great weekend. I am accompanied by Mr. John Harris as usual. Besides your Cowboys' big win, how was your weekend, Mr. John?
Pretty good. I'm also a Baylor fan. We beat Oklahoma. That was a really big win. So good weekend. All my teams are winning their games.
Great. So sorry, just my arm out. Alrighty, so we're just gonna jump right into the week 10 reactions. Obviously, starting off with the Thursday nighter. And yeah, it looked like it was going to be a precursor or just a runoff of what happened last weekend. Another upset with the Baltimore Ravens falling to the Miami Dolphins, 10-22. So Miami won 22-10. Tua had to come in for Jacoby Brissett and step in and help them win this game. But it really felt like it was mostly the defense. But regardless, John, what were your thoughts in regards to this Thursday nighter?
It was pretty concerning on the Ravens part, just because this is absolutely a game they should have won. And I think we're just starting to see that the injuries that they've had all over their roster, they're starting left tackle, safeties, corners, just a lot of different guys are getting hurt. And I think we're starting to see that, that's taking its toll. And it's unfortunate, but I think the Ravens are starting to drop games, here and having a sort of November slid, and that's not really what you want to see, especially against a Dolphins team that really just did nothing. Offensively, that was just honestly a pretty terrible performance from the Ravens. They just really couldn't do anything. And I would say offensively, for the most part, they're healthy. Like, obviously, we know the whole running back situation, but Devonta Freeman, he's been solid over the last few weeks. They have Le'Veon Bell there. And then, with the receivers, Sammy Watkins finally came back. Rashad Bateman's been turned on. Hollywood Brown's there. Mark Andrews had a good performance. And yet still, despite all that, they just really couldn't do much. So I don't know. It's just, I think it's a little bit concerning considering the Ravens are in prime position to be, you know, arguably the top team in the AFC, especially seeding wise. And then they come out here and they lose a game to the Dolphins that they absolutely should have won. Good for the Dolphins on winning. It was a scrappy game. It was an ugly one, but they came out on top. And ultimately, their defense they just shut down what everything Baltimore wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think part of that is just Baltimore's kind of become one dimensional. They don't really run the ball well. We all know they lost the running backs, like John mentioned. Lost for left tackle Ronnie Stanley. Then we forget they traded away a pretty good right tackle / also left tackle. He could play left tackle in Orlando Brown. So I think we've started to see, like, I got to the point where Miami was just, they were just sending blitzes, the corner blitzes. They were just basically crowding line of scrimmage, occasionally dropping guys out, but they were not afraid of the Ravens' run game, and they're all over the pass game concepts too. And then on the flip side, Ravens defense kind of did their job. For the most part, but still, this isn't the dominant Ravens defense, like you mentioned. Lost Marcus Peters, and a lot of their front lines kind of getting up there. Like, I know Calais Campbell's been good for a while, but he's starting to get up there in age. I think they still have Justin Houston, right? And we all know Justin's not near. People forget he had like 3 or 4 ACL surgeries, so it's definitely not where he once was. And then, just bringing in new pieces too. Like, Patrick Queen's been okay. He hasn't been, amazing. At least, that linebacker class is looking a little bit disappointing as a whole. And then, we'll see how it happens with Odafe Owe, but he's had some moments, but he's still getting used to the league. And then, like we already mentioned, safeties are okay. And, outside of Marlon Humphrey, their corners are just kind of okay. So, yeah, I think at least, just from talent wise, I think this game showed me that Baltimore's not a Super Bowl favorite, and I wouldn't put them as an AFC favorite. I think they're still a good team. They play tough. They could get a win or two in the playoffs. Wouldn't shock me if they even win the division. But I just, against the heavyweights, and like we mentioned last year, and maybe a little bit this year, but you got to win in different ways. And I'm not confident that the Ravens can. So yeah, like John mentioned, tough loss for them. And for Miami, though, it was a very good win. Good win to build off of. Granted, once again, short week. So I'm not taking too much stock in regards to this win for Miami. And as well as not bumping down Baltimore too much, but I think that revelation was very key to me. So now
Yeah,
going, go
I
ahead.
will just add real quick
Yeah,
about their defense that the numbers are showing that they're not what they used to be. At best, they're an average defense, but I think the biggest key right now is just losing Marcus Peters. I can't remember the safety they just lost. Played for Texas. Deshaun Elliott. He's
Elliott, yeah.
lost. So they lost those two guys amongst other stuff along the defense, but they're giving up the most passing yards per game in the entire league. I mean, they're up there with the Jets, right? And that Jets secondary doesn't have anywhere close to the talent that the Ravens do, even despite the injuries. Like Marlon Humphrey, he's a stud compared to everybody the Jets have. They have the fourth most overall yards in the league. The three teams ahead of them, haven't had their bye week yet, to where the Ravens have. So that's why they have more per game. So I mean, they're just not looking good. I mean, it's a passing league, and they're letting teams pass all over them. They're up there with a bunch of teams with losing records, and so I think at that point you got to give credit to their offense for most of the season. But then, like we said, in this game they didn't show up, and so it's like I don't know. I just feel like there's too many holes that the Ravens are showing that it makes me really doubt if they have a better chance this year than they do any of the previous years. And I think it's a shame too, because I think Lamar Jackson, especially throwing the ball, is probably having his best season.
Yeah. So um, we'll have to see what happens with them going forward in this offseason. But we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. They're still obviously in the driver's seat in that division and in that conference. But now kicking it over to the NFC and the Sunday games. Starting off, I'll let you take the wheel, but I don't imagine there's too much to say here. Dallas Cowboys get back on track, beat the Atlanta Falcons 43-3. I mean, it just seemed like Dallas dominated in every phase of the game, but I'm sure you definitely had your eye on this game. So take the wheel, my friend. What were your thoughts?
Impressive win from Dallas. Really glad they bounced back the way they did. Don't really care who the opponent was, but after the way they got embarrassed at home last week, it felt like they needed to come in and they just needed to bulldoze and just make whoever it was, which it's nothing that team did, but just make them look terrible. And that's what they did. They responded to anyone who was doubting that maybe this was going to be the start of a skid. They responded. I loved it. I mean, obviously, I think Atlanta they're an all right team, so I'm not going to say this was like the most impressive win, but this is what they needed to do, and so they they won it pretty much all three phases of the game. They got that block punt for a touchdown. The special teams was great. Offensively, obviously, they were really efficient. They scored a lot. Mike McCarthy, he was really aggressive early. They, went for it on fourth down multiple times, which he typically is. But I think specifically in this one, that's highlighted just because they wanted to put up points early and make a statement in the game. And then defensively, I mean, all three starting cornerbacks got interceptions. They just didn't allow anything on that side either. So not a whole lot else to say. Falcons, I wouldn't overreact to this one. I think this was just, tough matchup for them when it came to the opposing, team and having a really strong offense. Cordell Patterson got hurt. So, I mean, there's plenty of stuff for the Falcons that went wrong. And then also, the Cowboys were at home. And after what happened last week, I think they were just extra motivated. And also doesn't help that Dan Quinn, is facing the team that fired him. And in his words, he was embarrassed and pissed when they did. So I think, he probably wanted to get revenge, even though, I mean, the firing was everyone knew that he was
It
going
was
to get
warranted.
fired. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it
it
was
was just
warranted, but that doesn't mean that he's probably not going to feel some type of way about it.
yeah. So, all right. I mean, I don't have much else to add. You really hit on the nail. Like we mentioned, now that Dak had a full week of practice and Dallas offense kind of got back on track, both phases of the ball, running and passing, and then last offense just not good enough to take advantage of the few holes of Dallas's defense, and not many teams will be able to. So, yeah, I don't have much else to add there in regards to that one. But going on to a little bit more of a closer game, Tennessee Titans edge out the New Orleans Saints 23-21. And really, I think I'll go first. I mean, Tennessee, I think we need to put a little more respect on Ryan Tannehill. He's kind of earning that slowly and surely. Still put up points, and no AJ Brown this game as well. I believe too. I don't see him many on the stat line. Leading receiver was
Uh,
Mr.
he he
He
played, but I
played.
think he only
Okay,
had one catch. He was
okay.
guarded by Lattimore a lot of
So
the
yeah,
game.
basically, pretty much shut down too, which stinks. But they find a way. Also, part in their defense. Granted, they played Trevor Simeon in the Saints team that kind of has been struggling on offense, especially passing the ball. But regardless, hey, you can only play the people that the team that you're scheduled to. In Tennessee, it's without Derrick Henry. If you would tell me that they would win the next 2 weeks, I wouldn't believe it. But they have, and they found, even though the run game isn't what it typically is, that they're still finding ways on both ends of the ball. Very good sound back end defense, and front four get in there. They lost. I think Bud Dupree left this game with an injury. We're seeing Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons playing really well. Two young guys too that are stepping up. So, John, what were your thoughts in regards to this close game?
First off, impressive win for the Titans. I don't know how they keep finding ways to win despite everything that's happening. Julio Jones got placed on IR before this game. Derrick Henry's out. Like there's plenty of reasons for them to lose. I think I saw somewhere that they've had like over 80 players suit up for them this year. And that means that the max roster size is 53. So that means they've had to add 27 extra players to the roster at some point, whether it's through they cut somebody else or injuries, guys being placed on IR, all that kind of stuff. So they're rotating guys in and out, and they're still finding ways to win. I think that Mike Vrabel needs to get a lot of credit. I don't really see his name brought up a ton when it comes to the best coaches in the league.
Or
But
even
they
Coach of the
find
Year
ways.
this year. I think he
Yeah,
should definitely
yeah.
be a leading candidate now.
If they keep playing like this, I don't know how you could pick anybody else because they lost the guy who everyone said without him, this team can't win, myself included. And if they're winning right now, and they did it against the Rams, they've now done it against the Saints, two teams with winning records. Now, for the Saints, obviously, there was no, Jameis Winston, there was no Alvin Kamara. So there's that. But still, even without those guys, the Saints have found ways to win in the past too. So I don't know. Mike Vrabel, I think he's really impressed me. I think despite all the injuries, even the corners that they've had, their defense is really stepping up over the last few weeks, and I just think it's really impressive on the Titans' part. And they're the top seed in the AFC, and if they keep playing like this, I don't know if they'll lose that spot even despite Derrick Henry being out because they're finding ways to win, whether it's through their defense, whether it's through Tannehill, this stable of running backs, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So yeah, and just last point. Lose Derrick Henry, no Julio, and you lost your first round pick too, and Caleb Farley a few games ago. So lost a lot of your major investments, and you're still staying afloat. So good for Tennessee, and yeah, good for Mike Vrabel. Hopefully, he gets more recognition going forward outside of us, because obviously we're giving him some rec. But keeping it in the Titans division, the team nipping at their heels is the Indianapolis Colts, who are just, man, they're hoping for a loss because right now they're taking care of business, but they need help to get in the playoffs. They beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 23-17. Really jumped out on them in the first half. This was, unfortunately, I mentioned my bad luck of watching games. I watched this game, and it was kind of a blowout first half, and second half, Jacksonville kind of trotted back in, but Indianapolis shut the door. But I like Indy's defense. Obviously, they played pretty well, held Jacksonville down. I would just like to see them be more patient with the run game. Jonathan Taylor almost had 100 yards, and I forgot how many carries he had, but he had majority of his work in the first half. In the second half, Jacksonville had some answers, but Indianapolis just kind of abandoned it almost completely. And it's just hard. And I'm not sure if that's Frank Reich or this is Carson Wentz, but one of them needs to just be more patient with the run, because I think they just overthought it. A few more play action plays, things like that. But Jacksonville's a fast team. They're built to mainly stop the pass and such. So I would just like Indianapolis to be more patient going forward. But regardless, I liked what they did on both sides of the ball. Defense did an okay job. I still have a few concerns in their secondary, but for the most part, Good job, New Indianapolis Jaguars. I think they showed a good fight, but obviously they're not there yet. But John, what were your thoughts in regards to this one?
I mean, I don't have a ton to say on this one. I mean, Indianapolis, they won the game. It doesn't look really impressive on the box score. Jonathan Taylor had a good one, but like you said, it was kind of in the first half. For me, honestly, this one sucked because of fantasy. I had Carson Wentz in two different leagues starting, and he didn't do bad, but he just didn't really have to do anything. Like he had 180 yards passing, and that was it. Didn't turn it over. There was just nothing special. Just got the job done, got the win, and I feel like that sort of defines how the game went too. Nothing really special about this win. Colts just came out and got it done.
Yep, took care of business. All right, so now going on to another game. I think we got two here that will be pretty quick reviews. But going on to the AFC East, New England Patriots really beat up on the Browns, 45-7. I believe the Browns scored the first drive. I forget, but Browns scored in the first quarter, and then from there on out, it was all New England basically. Mac Jones 3 touchdowns. Ramondre Stevenson had a good game on the ground. Uh, Basically, kind of went. I went as perfect as I thought it would be. I thought it would be a much closer game than when I predicted. I did not expect a blowout like this for Cleveland on offense. I think we kind of saw once you stop the run game. Now, granted, they don't have their main playmakers, Nick Chubb. I almost said Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt. Those are their main two guys. But I think in regards to how once again at this point we're starting to see some of the teams separate, trying to figure out who's a Super Bowl contender, who just kind of I think Cleveland's in that same situation as Baltimore. You stop the run game. I'm not confident they're going to be able to beat you through the air if they need to. And then they're granted this is New England though. Their defense, Cleveland's defense, couldn't get off the field. New England was able to really do what they want, run the ball, and then whenever they had to creep up, Mac Jones made the appropriate throw. I mean, he only had 5 incompletions on 23 attempts. 4 incompletions, went 19 for 23. So he's obviously in tune with his offense. And I mean, New England's rolling. So I think they're a team to look out for going forward. But John, what were your thoughts in regards to this one?
I mean, I picked the Browns to keep this one close. They obviously didn't. I honestly, I think the Browns they're getting more disappointing as the season goes on. They just have certain stretches where they look like maybe that they'll finally bounce back to what we expect them to be based on the overall talent of this team. Because I would still argue this is one of the most talented teams in the entire NFL, and yet they can't get over the hump. And to me, the way this game went, the game script, I just can't help but feel like Stefanski doesn't really trust Baker Mayfield. I mean, I know that he got hurt in this one, but like he had 21 pass attempts and only 73 yards. So I don't know what the plays are. I know that Bill Belichick is an amazing defensive coach. He messes with these young QBs, and I don't really think that Baker Mayfield is necessarily good enough to not be in that category with the other QBs who struggle against Bill Belichick. But at the same time, like they have good wide receivers, they have good tight ends, they have good run game, one of the best offensive lines in the league, talent on defense, and they're not winning games. And then even Stefanski, like he's shown that he can be an amazing offensive play caller, both in Minnesota and last year in Cleveland. So I don't know what it is. I'm not putting all the blame on Baker. He did get hurt in this one, and that sucks. But yeah, I don't know. There's something wrong with Cleveland. I mean, also the fact that they let Mac Jones just do whatever he wanted to them, like 45 points, man. That's tough. So yeah, I don't know what to say about Cleveland.
And one more point I want to add to, I think, which may be the answer to your question, they just seem simplistic on both sides of the ball. I don't see a lot of interesting formations or on offense, especially on offense, not a lot of interesting formations or a lot of motions. And I'm just I have to I don't I have to actually rewatch the game, but at least when I watched in the past, not a lot of creative concepts either to kind of attack the same areas of the field. And on defense, they're running that Seattle scheme, so that could be it too. At least from my see, there's running certain. They're doing what they do. They don't specifically like New England and many other teams. They have a specific game plan specific, like we say. They have certain offensive plays or plan of attack. Where Cleveland, maybe because of their talent, they just say, "Hey, we're talented. We're just gonna do what we do," and hope that it'll work. But I think we're starting to see against some of the elites, it's not going to work that way. I'm not saying for Kevin Stefanski to be gone, but I think they need new ideas soon, and hopefully, the head coaches can realize that, make those adjustments going forward. If that is the issue, but I'm sure that's just one thing. So
Yeah,
definitely
and I
more than
will
that.
say they are dealing with injuries. Kareem Hunt, right? He's not there, and he's really key piece of their offense. Their
Nick
offensive
Chubb
line,
out to
they've
COVID
had
too.
different injuries. Yeah, Chubb's, he's missed some games. Even on their defense, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, he looked really amazing and seemed like he was going to be a key piece. He's not there anymore. So there are injuries that have occurred, but even then, I don't know. I feel like Cleveland still has a lot of
Yeah.
key pieces and talent that should be there, and it's just not working out. So
Yeah,
I don't
and
know. I would say they're really disappointing for me.
yeah, because and sorry, well, to go off that too. I mean, we just mentioned New Orleans and Tennessee. Like these are two teams still
Yeah,
scrapping, still finding ways to win football games. Heck, even Arizona last week with some of their guys out. So I think you can't always rely on your talent. And that's what's kind of showing right now.
I
I
mean,
think,
Carolina this week, right?
yeah.
Sam Darnold's gone. Cam just showed up, so PJ Walker steps in and they win the game, right?
So yeah. Anyways, Cleveland got drubbed by the New England Patriots. So we'll see how they respond going forward. And obviously, New England, like we mentioned, just silently but efficiently rolling through and becoming a real threat in the AFC. But like I mentioned, keeping it in their division. The Bills and Jets played. Wasn't unless you were a Bills fan, it wasn't much of an exciting game or had Stephon Diggs or Josh Allen because they beat the Jets pretty soundly, 45-17. Josh Allen, in the past game, kind of got back on track. Run game was pretty well too. I saw multiple guys get in the end zone. But once again, it's the Jets, so I'm not saying that I'm not fully taking too much from this game on either side. Except I will say for the Jets, kind of saw Mike White come back to earth. So all the people that were wanting them to get rid of Zach Wilson, I think if you tweeted or put on social media, you may want to delete that or admit you're wrong. Just saying, because yeah, he had the one good week against Cincy, but ever since then, not much going for the Jets. So sorry, Jet fans. Don't mean to rain on your Mike White parade, but it's already pretty much over. So, John, what were your thoughts in regards to this AFC East showdown?
Don't have a lot. It went as expected. Buffalo's defense is absurd. Mike White, I mean, like you said, he had a fun game against the Bengals where he, had an average depth of target of like 4 yards and was just thinking and dunking his way down the field, and the Bengals couldn't stop it. Buffalo is far better than the Bengals defense, and they knew that. They weren't going to allow what Mike White is good at, and so they just took away the underneath stuff. They made him test him deep, and boom, 4 interceptions. There you go against that talented secondary. So not a whole lot to say there, but it was a great game for me as a Stephon Diggs and Michael Carter fantasy owner.
Yeah, so it's good to see him. Yeah, Diggs accounted for almost half the receiving yards that Josh Allen threw for. So, and now it was kind of an exciting game, but an ugly game. We have the first tie in the 2021 season, 22 season. It involves the Pittsburgh Steelers and Detroit Lions. Pittsburgh, no, Ben Roethlisberger had to go into this game with Mason Rudolph. It was at Heinz Field. It was rainy. I think it rained for a majority of the game. It looked miserable to be. I felt bad for the refs. I was watching the overtime game. I just felt like at that point the refs were just getting upset that they were getting penalties. It just seemed like they were just like, just get this game over with. But yeah, overtime, Pittsburgh had a chance to was in field goal range, fumbled. Our guy Pat Fryermuth fumbled a catch, pretty much iced the game from there because the Lions couldn't get in range. And Lions had their share of missed kicks. I think Pittsburgh also, Chris Boswell missed a field goal as well. Just an ugly. It's like every tie. I feel like every tie is like a game that's just real ugly, and like it just seemed like neither team wanted to win. Only the announcer I really have is I think Dan Campbell's given up on Jared Goff because he took over play calling duties, and Jared Goff, I forgot I don't even have, let me pull up the box score, but he didn't throw the ball much. They basically did not. Yeah, he threw the ball 25 times, 14 for 25, 114 yards passing. Other than that, they ran the ball 39 times and just fed DeAndre Swift. and kept the ball on the ground. So um, it almost worked the game plan, but they just couldn't come up in the end with enough points. But John, what were your thoughts in regards to this dull tie?
Well, first off, good for the Lions on avoiding the first ever 0-17 season. Only one that was left in the contention for that. Won't happen, but still in contention for 0-16-1. But the Steelers, I mean, this baffles me, and I think it just goes back to something that I was talking about when it comes to how you pick Steelers games. And they're favored, you pick the other team. When they're the underdogs, you can pick them. And I mean, I know that Big Ben didn't play in this one, and so maybe that changes things, but they blew it. Like, they had plenty of opportunities to win this game. They threw the ball 50 times and ran the ball 31 times. Like, that's an absurd amount of offensive plays, and they put up 16 points. Like, that's just not good enough. I mean, they had turnovers, right? Mason Rudolph threw the interception. They lost 2 fumbles. Like, there
Well,
were
and then I
opportunities.
think it was was it not first drive, but there was the one touchdown pass where he was like 5 yards from the guy and just just dirts it, just threw it in the dirt.
Yeah,
I forget when that was. I remember seeing a highlight of that, and I was like, yeah, that's why he's not their guy. He's always not a franchise guy. That's why he's just a backup at best. Which even then, I think we saw this game. That's a little pushing it.
yeah, and so I mean, it was a really ugly game. Overtime, if you didn't care who won this one, overtime was really exciting
That's
because it was
that's my
just
team, man.
turnover, fumble, like punt, like almost intercepted. Like, everything was just going crazy. It looked like both teams were gonna win. Lions kicker, I think he missed a field goal. Like, it was wild. It was a very entertaining game. But at the same time, it was an ugly one. I didn't watch it. I saw it on Red Zone, so the highlights were awesome. But other than that, I mean, the Steelers just, yeah, another game that was really disappointing for them because it's the lowly Lions. They tied with them, and they had so many opportunities to win that game. Yeah, even without Big Ben, without some of the stuff, they're still the more talented team. It's the Lions. So yeah, the Steelers had the opportunity to really make some noise in the AFC, and I think that they missed their opportunity in a game they absolutely should have won.
Yeah, they saw Baltimore win, so they extend their lead. And although Cleveland lost, they could have gotten even a bigger lead on Cleveland. So, and then not even to mention the wild card race, which is going to be real tight with teams like Indianapolis, and probably maybe Miami. Teams, and then all the teams in the AFC West almost in contention. So, yeah, maybe a costly result for them. We will see. So, congrats on no winner there, really. But now going on to one of the upsets of the weekend was the Washington football team. They beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 29-19 in the rematch from last year's wild card. Um, yeah, I'll let you go first in regards to this one. What were your thoughts on what happened here?
Uh, where do I start? First off, I just want to acknowledge I put Antonio Gibson on the sits this week, and I missed one key factor that really determined, why I was wrong. That was, at no point did I ever consider that Washington would be leading this game for an extended period of time. And they did. I mean, they were winning for pretty much the whole game. I don't know if there was ever a point where they were trailing. And so that happened. Tom Brady looked terrible. I mean, they were missing a few of their key players, like Antonio Brown. He wasn't there. I
Gronk's
don't
still
know.
out.
Yeah, Gronk's still out, and so there was just, there was guys that didn't play, but that doesn't really give you any excuse because Washington, Chase Young tears his ACL mid-game. Still Taylor Heineke is their quarterback. I don't think Curtis Samuel has played pretty much any game at all this year except for very limited snaps. Like, I mean, they're just Washington was. This is another game where the Buccaneers should have won. Washington came out. They just played better. They took advantage of their opportunities, and once they got the lead, they did not give it up. It blew my mind that I think they had the ball for 10 and a half minutes to end the game and scored a touchdown on that drive. 19 plays over 80 yards, 10 and a half minutes. They basically held the ball for the entire fourth quarter and did not allow Tampa to get the ball back and have a comeback attempt. So good on Washington for getting that win. I mean, that to me that was incredibly impressive the way that they won.
Yeah, it was kind of similar to the game we saw last year a little bit. Like Heineke and took care of the ball, didn't really, was fine with matriculating down the field. And then on the opposite end, even though they lost Chase Young, it's just Brady never really seemed settled in the pocket. They were able not really to sack him as much, but to get disruption and to move Brady off his spots, kind of get pressure on him. And like we mentioned, I don't. It doesn't matter if you're an experienced guy like Brady, Rodgers, or a rookie. Like when you start getting pressure and start getting hit, and even if it's not a sack, you just it gets to your head. And especially at Tom's age, it's is one of his few weaknesses, and kind of showed this game, and also the fact that they were missing Gronk and AB, just guys that would probably help that he could rely on to maybe get the ball out quicker and things like that. But yeah, I mean it was, and then a little bit disappointed Buccaneers defense. I I think they need to kind of go to what they did with Kansas City in the Super Bowl, and they need to go back to that game plan, and we're just gonna rush with our front four because they have a pretty good front four. Even though they did lose Vita Vea this game, still have a good front four. Don't need to be so blitz happy because especially with how poor your secondary is with all the injuries and such. I would imagine you want to help those those guys that you're bringing up off the practice squad out a little bit more instead of putting them in dire situations. Which I know not getting burned, but still, like we mentioned, getting death by 1,000 paper cuts almost per se. So going for Washington, but yeah, I wouldn't feel too bad about Antonio Gibson. That was just, I mean, you look at take the touchdown, 24 carries, 64 yards. Like he didn't do. It was really
Yeah.
inefficient, extreme. Like I said, in one of my leagues, I benched him, and I still won, thank God. But yeah, the only reason I play him in our league is because there's two flex spots, and I was like, and my team kind of sucks. But
And like I said, I at no point, which I would say, I don't feel bad about putting him there. Like most people that I looked at, other lists were also putting him there because once again, at no point did I expect Washington to be winning this game the entire time, which is naturally going to give Antonio Gibson more carry attempts. And also, if they're winning, they're probably in the red zone, which is going to give him more red zone opportunities and he got touchdowns. So I don't feel bad about it, but just wanted to throw that out there
it's
because I
just
know people have
unlucky.
already mentioned it.
Just
But
unlucky.
I do want to add this about Tampa. First off, they've been pretty terrible against the spread this year. I think the only games they've covered were against the Falcons, the Dolphins, and the Bears. And so week one against the Cowboys, I think that's the only home game they didn't cover. The other three were all home games, which means every away game they have not covered so far, which maybe that means when they're away, we got to just go against them because first away game, week three against the Rams, they lose. Next away game, week four against the Patriots, they win, by 2 points. Then against the Eagles, they win by 6. I think the line is 7.5. Then obviously, their last game before the bye week, the Saints, they lost that one. And then now against Washington away, they lose that one. So all three of their losses are on the road. And the other two games that they did win on the road, they didn't cover. So maybe they're not the team to pick to cover on the road.
I mean, New Year. I mean, we gotta get out of the. We forget that for the first 14 weeks last year, they were kind of struggling. Then they really kind of found their stride, and they had a little bit. Which every champion's a little lucky. Had a lucky with the clean bill of health for the most part, for the most of the playoffs, and especially the Super Bowl. So, kind of seeing that now, and we'll see if they can battle through that adversity. Sorry, not diversity, adversity going forward. Um, but now going, I think this was the last noon game. Regardless, we kind of mentioned it. Carolina Panthers took care of business against Colt McCoy and the Arizona Cardinals, 34-10. Colt McCoy also left this game, got injured. Saw some Cam Newton this game. He had 9 snaps. 2 of those led to touchdowns. But PJ Walker was solid as well. And McCaffrey back to doing McCaffrey-esque things. 13 carries, 95 yards, and also basically was their leading receiver as well. But yeah, it was really just both sides of the ball. I felt like, granted, like we mentioned, Arizona missing guys and down to the third string quarterback, so that's never helpful. And Carolina, though, I think maybe desperation factored into. We'll mention it later, but I think some teams' desperation was a real thing this week, and Carolina was definitely one of them to stay alive in the playoff picture. But John, what were your thoughts in regards to your boy Matt Rule and the gang?
Well, I mean, first off, having McCaffrey back is just it's huge. He's just such an important part of their offense. I mean, the success goes as he goes, honestly. And so when he's there and he's doing good, like they're gonna look good. So that was massive that he was there. I think adding Cam is also just a big dynamic change for them because I don't based on those sideline clips of Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore responding to Sam Darnold, I'm not sure that Sam Darnold really is like a leader, within that locker room.
Yeah.
We know that Cam, no matter where he goes, is going to be that, right? He's a massive personality. He's also just a massive man. And so the presence that he commands, just the swagger that he has. I think that players in the league, they want to play with him. They really like him. They respect a guy like that. And so I think that adding him could have probably energized this team. Maybe there was a point where they're starting to drift off. They're losing games. They just weren't looking as good. You add Cam, I think this could bring new life to them, even if he didn't really get involved as much in this one. I think that it added a new dynamic to the locker room that probably got those guys excited. And then on top of that, the Cardinals, I just felt like this was going to be the week that the injuries caught up with them because no Kyler, no Hopkins, no Edmonds. I mean, I don't know. It just felt like that defense, the way that they, were built, all the speed that they had. I couldn't really, bring myself to trust that Colt McCoy was going to do that against the Cardinals defense, especially with, the McCaffrey, return return over the last few weeks, and then Cam being back too. I don't know. I just feel like it was the perfect storm for what first off the Panthers needed this week. And I think if the season ended right now, they would actually be in the playoffs. I might be wrong on that. I think they'd be the seventh seed
They're
though.
very close. They're 5-5. I'll pull up the rankings right now.
I know there's a few 5-5 teams, so I don't know the tiebreakers and how that would be. But I mean
No, yeah,
that's
they'd be the 7th seed. But they've also played one more game than Minnesota. They
okay.
haven't had their bye weeks. That's because they're
Gotcha.
5-5. Minnesota's 4-5. Same with San Fran and Atlanta. Those three teams are 4-5.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, regardless, I mean, don't sleep on Carolina. I think they can still be in it. And I think that adding Cam, to me, I've always felt like he was a better quarterback than Sam Darnold anyway. So I think that they've upgraded and they could, surprise some people moving forward.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I think Matt Rule hasn't committed, right? I think he said that he's going to see, but Wednesday, we'll ask Wednesday if Cam will be the starter. But
He'll be the
I mean,
starter.
you already got him snaps this game. You don't, already give him like 10 snaps if you don't want him to win the starting job eventually. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so good one for Carolina, and maybe this would get some back on track going forward. Is the Cam homecoming? But now going on to I know that these games are definitely afternoon. Starting with the Minnesota Vikings going to LA and beating the Chargers 27-20. Um, yeah, it just hasn't been a good stretch of weeks for the Chargers. I think I think they had a good game last week. That was what they faced the Eagles, but still close. Other than that, I think I saw I forgot the stats quickly, but Justin Herbert, besides that Philly game, he's had some of the worst games, at least QBR wise, the past few weeks. Granted, I don't put that on him, all on him. I think they need to add a little. They need more creativity on offense. It seemed like Minnesota had a feel for what they were doing, and on the flip side, like we mentioned, um, because of their inability to stop the run game, it feels like Brand Staley's kind of either got he's in a tough spot. He's either got to load the box and hope that his coverage can hold up, which didn't really do. Justin Jefferson had a really good game. Kirk Cousins also balled out, or just hope that just play whatever he's going to do and hope that somehow they still get the stop, which didn't happen because Dalvin Cook still had, uh, an efficient game, 94 yards and a touchdown. So yeah, John, what were your thoughts in regards to this one?
I mean, the Vikings, if we look at all their games and their point differential, they win close games and they lose a lot of close games. And so I think it was just a matter of will the ball go their way this week, and it did. They showed up, they won a close one, a tight one, and it's just unfortunate because I think their record it could be the opposite and be really good. Like they could have 6-7 wins if some of these tight games had gone their way like it did this week. I think that just matchup wise, like you said, their ability to run the ball, their playmakers on the outside, they just presented a matchup problem for the Chargers, especially because they have a solid front seven, so they have the ability to stop the opposing team's run game, especially since Austin Eckler is not necessarily this bruising back that's going to get better as the game goes on. So that's going to force them to pass, and then they kind of come be one dimensional, especially since Mike Williams just really hasn't gotten as involved as he was the first 4 weeks. I mean, Keenan Allen is pretty much the go-to, the only option at passing game as of right now. So yeah, the Chargers, I think the one thing to remember is this is still an incredibly young team. I mean, I think I had them in the playoffs. I don't know if you did.
I'll check my thing real quick. I have
And
it written down.
and so honestly, I would say that 5-4, it's not a terrible place to be, beating a team like the Chiefs early in the year. I mean, they have some solid wins, some solid performances. So I
Didn't
wouldn't
have
say
them.
that, yeah. So I wouldn't say they're necessarily, a team to panic on, that they're not on track. I still think this is a building year, first year head coach. So, I wouldn't, put the panic button on with the Chargers and, some bad performances. Cause like I said, young team, a lot of new pieces this year, new coaching staff. They're just getting things gelling. And so, yeah, we'll see what they look like over the next few years. But I think I see the talent that they have there. And I think there's plenty of building blocks that if they just add a few more pieces, a lot of these games, these close ones that they're losing, can easily turn into wins.
Yeah. Yeah, I have them. I kind of feel the same. I think they're just like a fringe playoff team right now.
Yeah.
Just with what they have.
They don't scare anybody, but they could maybe make it.
They just need I think they need a speedster. They need like a not yeah, I know it's like say like a Tyree Aaron Jones, just a guy that scares you with his pure speed that they can use in different ways. They don't really have that right now. I feel
Yeah,
like
because Keenan's like a solid possession slot
that
guy,
and same
route
thing.
runner.
Mike
Mike
Williams'
Williams,
size,
he's not going to
route
burn
runner.
anybody.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I would agree. They need some speed.
need some guy. But alrighty. So that is a good win for the Vikings, like we mentioned, just read off the NFC stats a few minutes ago. That keeps them in the race for the wild card playoff spot. So now, keeping it in regards to another team chasing that spot, the Philadelphia Eagles, they get a very key win against the Denver Broncos, 30-13. Shocker! All their wins, by the way, are on the road. They have not. They're 4-2 away, and I guess maybe they haven't. They seem like they've been on the road a lot. Actually, that's four. They're 0-4 at home. Anyways, they took care of business though at Mile High. Really through the run game for the most part. However, Devonta Smith had 2 touchdowns. One of them was a great grab and double coverage, basically. So did enough in the pass game to keep Denver honest, and then as we saw, kind of, I'm sure you've seen it, but kind of game changing, wave turning moment that really broke open the game for them. Darius Slay with the scoop and score. Some people kind of went at Teddy because Teddy didn't really make his best effort on the tackle there. And also, I think the
He
main
put in
issue,
zero effort.
I think the issue was too that he blocked Melvin Gordon from getting even. You know what I mean? Melvin Gordon would look like he
Yeah.
was about to gain some traction, and then he blocked. Like at least, yeah. Like either be the last line of defense. Like I always love to see the old quarterbacks like trying to run back there, and they just get run past. Either be that or like dive at their feet and just try to take the legs out, and then hope that you don't get trampled or something. I don't know, but yeah. Eagles
You could
win.
always just stand in the way. I don't know. Try to slow him down by just being there,
Yeah. Anyway, I mean,
Especially the way the score was in that game. Like, it wasn't out of hand yet.
that was what that was when it was like 2013. I think they were driving. I believe it was like
So
a
it's
one
like
possession game,
yeah. So, like,
and
I
then
don't
from
know.
there it just the wheels fell off. But
But that being said, I will say Teddy came back from one of the most gruesome injuries a football player has
okay,
ever
yeah,
had in their career,
well,
earlier in his career. So, like, maybe he should, he just didn't want to get hurt. And I kind of respect it based on what he did go through when, his rookie year.
but yeah. Anyways, regardless, Denver team that's really been struggling on offense. Outside of their 2 running backs, which have been the only real bright spot. I mean, Teddy's been okay, but especially I'm saying this is I just feel like their pass games nothing really scares you. Cortland Sutton hasn't really been a factor the previous few weeks. I know Jerry Judy's been back, but and granted they're missing KJ Hamler, who's their guy to take the top off the defense. But yeah, this Denver team's been kind of hard to get a read on, but this is a tough loss in a very tight AFC uh, playoff picture. So, John, you have anything else to add in regards to this one? You can take the main wheel now.
First off, for Philly, I mean, over the last like 4 or 5 weeks has really been the case, especially since Miles Sanders got hurt, which I don't know why this has changed after he got hurt. They're running the ball a lot. They've committed to being a run first team, and that is that's boding well for them. They're getting a lot of success out of this. They ran for over 200 yards in this game. I mean, they ran 40 times compared to Jalen Hurts throwing 23 times, and it's working. Boston Scott had 11 carries, averaged over 7 yards a carry. Jordan Howard had 12, averaged almost 7 yards a carry. Like, they're having success running the ground. Jalen Hurts had a 50 as well. So good on Nick Sirianni for finally adjusting. I mean, I wonder what the record would have been if they were running the ball earlier in the year. I mean, even thinking back to the game against the Cowboys, like they got blown out in that one. But if you run the ball, you keep that ball out of the opponent's hands, you prevent your quarterback from throwing interceptions, and maybe you get some success when it comes to just keeping your drive alive. Because a pass play, you throw it up in the air and an incompletion, you get nothing. At least in a poor run, maybe you get 1 or 2 yards, just get you closer, make it more manageable. So good on the Eagles for finally running the ball, because it's really helped them start to turn their season around a bit. And then on the Broncos side, I'm disappointed at the lack of running in this game. I mean, Melvin Gordon had 45 carries on 9 touches. He averaged 5 a carry. Javonte Williams, 48 yards on 8 touches. That's 6 yards a carry. I mean, just feed the guys the ball. Combined, they had 17 carries, to where the Eagles, they ran the ball 40 times. Like, I don't understand what Denver's offensive philosophy was in this one. I felt like the running backs were having success. Like, give them the ball more. I mean, they had Jordan Howard get 12, Boston Scott had 11, and Jalen Hurts had 14 carries respectively. All of those guys had double digits, and the Broncos didn't have either of the running backs, who are both incredibly talented, get double digits. Really disappointing loss to me for Denver. It makes me that, like, the way that I talked about the Cowboys after last week's game, the Cowboys responded the way they needed to. Denver did not. It looked like Denver was starting to prove people wrong, that they could beat teams that weren't dumpster fire, like the Jaguars and the Jets. And I'm not saying the Eagles are in that spot, but the Eagles, they're a team that was pretty similar, I would say, to where Denver was a few weeks ago, and the Eagles are starting to hit their stride, and Denver, where they could have picked up some momentum, they just didn't capitalize. And that was just a really tough loss for them, because this week, with the way their division went, the Chiefs Raiders game hadn't happened yet, but those guys are matching up, which means one of them is going to lose. The Chargers had lost. The I don't know. I just felt like the division was there for the taking. I don't know what the tiebreaker situation would have been with the way when the Chiefs won, but I mean, they would be first or second in their division, and well, tied for first pretty much.
Okay, so just to get an idea of tiebreakers, because they were tied with Cleveland and Indianapolis. They're on the bottom of those three. Cleveland won the tiebreaker, head-to-head win percentage. So I guess strength of schedule factors in for Cleveland. And then Indianapolis will be over Cleveland and Denver because they have a better win percentage in conference games. So, anyways, but yeah, so that is Eagles Broncos. But now going on to the last game of the afternoon slot on Sunday, my Packers beat the Seattle Seahawks 17-0. Russell Wilson came back from his injury and definitely looked not 100% in regards to throwing the ball. Also, his first game action in a couple of weeks as well. I think that's important to factor in. But I will still give credit to my Packers defense. Never thought I'd see, like I mentioned before, I never thought I'd see the day where we lose a bunch of our main pieces and we still play really well. It's just, I don't want to say we've turned but we're still a good defense. I love what Joe Barry's doing. And yeah, it's just because, like, previously our defenses were always kind of mid anyway. So when we started losing pieces, it was like, oh no, like this is really going to fall off. But yeah, I mean, Eric Stokes actually played this game, but once again, no Jair, no Zadarius Smith, and still played really well. Granted, like I said, Russell Wilson, not 100%. And yeah, I mean, Rodgers also on the other end wasn't really fully in form. Saw him kind of not really let it all the way loose on Alan Lazard one time. Lazard also had a few drops too. But this was really the AJ Dillon show, which I've been liking the past 2 weeks. And granted, it stinks that Aaron Jones is out for a few weeks, but that may help him, I think, in the long run. I'd rather have him fresh for the playoffs since he's our main playmaker. But I love that AJ Dillon's been more involved. Quadzilla, they call him, quad fodder, whatever. Just adds a physicality to the run game and to the team. And yeah, I love it. So, like what I saw from there. But in regards to Seattle, I know I saw some people, saying because DK only had 3 catches, 26 yards. Lockett was 2 for 23. But once again, like I don't think Russell Wilson really looked down the field very much. Anyways, it seemed like he was just throwing within 5 to 10 yards. I mean, the longest play in offense was 28 yards from Will Dissly, and if I remember correctly, I think majority of that it was like a 7-yard pass, and it was like he just ran. It was just like a busted zone or man coverage where most of that was the yak. So hopefully Russell gets back into form for Seattle because they're in a dire situation at 3-6 in the NFC. And yeah, I'm curious to see, especially if they don't make that push, what will happen because there's still the rumors that he still wants out after this season. So, John, what were your thoughts in regards to this game?
Well, first off, my initial impression was, I think, when guys miss practice, they miss time. You just see some rustiness. Both Russell and Aaron Rodgers just didn't really look amazing in this one. I mean, I wouldn't say that, they necessarily look terrible, but like this just was not the Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers that we expect to see normally. And I think Russell specifically, it just looked like they rushed him back. Like you said, just wasn't really comfortable testing anything deep. He had only 160 passing yards. I don't know. Just like they rushed him back because maybe it was a really important NFC game. They still want to try and make the playoffs, and that's absolutely reasonable. I'm sure that Russell himself was like, "No, let me play." But then you go out there, you put up 0 points, and so that's that. I don't know. Just seems like maybe they potentially wasted a week of recovery to try and get him back in a game that they didn't win.
Yeah.
On the other side of the ball, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I'll wait till after you're done. Go ahead.
Okay. For the Packers, shout out Kevin King because over the last 3 games, he's had some really important performances. 3 weeks ago against the Bengals, he held T. Higgins to 3 catches for 17 yards. 2 weeks ago against Tyreek Hill, 2 receptions for 19 yards. And then this week against DK Metcalf, he only allowed 1 catch for 1 yard. Now, he obviously, all the 3 of those receivers, he didn't cover them the entire game. But when he's matched up against those guys who are, 2 of those guys are top 10 receivers easily. And then T. Higgins, an up and coming, really solid receiver in a high octane passing offense. He's having success. Eric Stokes on the other side, I think he's living up to the first round.
I'm sorry, Eric. I'm sorry I was upset on draft night. Okay, I wanted someone else, but you're working out fine.
Yeah, I would say he's living up to the first round pick, and then just overall, I mean, the defense, like we just talked about with the Titans, like they're just finding ways to win games. No Jair Alexander, other stuff going on. Rodgers had COVID, whatever. The Packers are finding a way to win games, and especially on that defense, they're finding ways to have really solid performances. Other people are stepping up, and I think that's key. And especially that bodes well for when your team does get fully healthy for a long playoff run. And then, like you even talked about, Aaron Jones goes out, AJ Dillon steps up too. So solid win from the Packers. Wasn't the prettiest, but they got it done, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and I just want to add this Seattle on offense, another team that kind of has a Cleveland mentality of this is what we're going to do, and it doesn't matter the game or who the opponent, we're just going to do what we do on offense, especially. And we see that it didn't work out well, and you could have a creative screen. Like, can you have a creative screen for DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett, 2 guys that are fast and are good with the ball in their hands? Just help. I know he's Russ Wilson. He's amazing. He'll bail. He can make the darndest throws and escape and stuff, but you can help him out too. You can give him an easy throw every now and then, an easy a screen or something. So, and I imagine that's probably the reason. Probably, like I said, probably seeing Jimmy Garoppolo across from and we'll talk about that game soon. And some of the other elite offenses saying like, man, these guys are open. These are easy throws. Like I can make those throws in my sleep and and they'll look great on my stat line once the receiver runs 50 yards. But I'm not getting that. So we'll have to see what happens with Seattle going forward. But yeah, going for my Packers, and hopefully we can still hang on with the litany of injuries we have going on. Should get Bakhtiari back soon. He's already off IR, but hasn't been ready to play. So yeah, going for the Packers. Tough loss for the Seattle. But now going to the Sunday night game where the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, are back on track. He said someone showed him a video and he got his swag back, is what he said. But yeah, 41-14 against the Raiders. Kelsey, Tyreek Hill looked like they had good games again. Got Darrell Williams involved, and not just the running game, but the passing game as well. So I don't have much to say except it just looked like Kansas City found their rhythm again that they had, that we know that we know that they're capable of. And then on other side defense, they did a pretty solid job as well against the Raiders, who kind of seemed to be losing a little bit of their steam that they had early / mid season, even amidst all the drama that they were dealing with. So, John, what are your thoughts in regards to the Sunday nighter?
First off, good for Kansas City for finally looking like the team that we expect them to look like. Their defense is playing good. I talked about how over the last stretch of games they had been good, but that was against mediocre quarterbacks at best. Like it was kind of bottom tier quarterbacks. They did it again against Derek Carr, who's way better than all the other guys that they'd been playing. So that was great. But I think ultimately their offense just finally being able to put up points again and doing it fast. That's why they won here, because that forced the Raiders out of the run game. Josh Jacobs only 7 carries, Kenyon Drake only 4. I mean, they didn't allow the Raiders to run the ball because they're playing from behind the whole time, and that's the Kansas City that people know. That's the Kansas City that we expect. But ultimately, I think the biggest standout to me in this game was I'm really disappointed in Gus Bradley, the Raiders defensive play caller, because like you mentioned with Cleveland and some of these other teams, and just having sort of a set mindset of how they want to play and not adjusting to what your opponent is going to do. The Raiders did not do the defensive scheme that most other teams have been doing all year, which is just putting a lot of players in coverage and bracketing both Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill so that no matter which way they go, there's someone waiting. They played just their typical cover 3 and allowed Tyreek and Travis Kelce to go one-on-one pretty much the whole game. Like I don't think I really ever saw either of those guys double covered. And we saw that it allowed Patrick Mahomes to do what he does. And so I don't know. I don't know if I want to say the Chiefs are fully back, but I'm not like 100% ready to buy it just because of what I saw defensively out of the Raiders there. And so I don't know. I'm really disappointed in the Raiders and how they didn't. I just felt like the other teams in the league were showing you there is a blueprint to try and stop Kansas City. Now, obviously, I'm not ready to say that blueprint is like 100% foolproof. That's how you win, because it's only been half a season, right? And even then, the Chiefs are still I think number 1 in the league when it comes to points per drive. So I'm not fully ready to say that Kansas City, is easily stopped through that method, but it was working on the year. Why would you not continue to do it? I don't know, especially since I don't think it was a lack of personnel. I think they absolutely have the personnel to do it. They just chose not to.
I had myself muted. But yeah, we'll see. They do play your Dallas Cowboys next week, so that'll be a fun matchup for both sides. Good test for both teams. So good to see the Chiefs back on track, though. Not just my fantasy team, but just in general. I feel like the league's better whenever Kansas City is fun to watch. Because for a while there, they were like the only dependable fun watch. And this year, they haven't been that dependable, fun, exciting, air show that they like to be.
If they want to be fun next week, I mean, ideally they're fun and they lose. I'd be okay though if they're not fun for this week.
Yeah. So, alrighty, now going to the last game of the week, the Monday Nighter, where the San Francisco 49ers, with their season basically pretty much on the line if they want to make the playoffs, they respond and beat the Rams and with newly acquired Odell Beckham and Von Miller, didn't matter, even though Odell didn't play much. Uh, the Niners took care of business. It was, as a Packer fan, it was very reminiscent of the championship game where Kyle Shanahan was just said we're just gonna run the ball. We don't care. We're gonna run the ball, and then until you absolutely show us a look that we like, to maybe and we saw Deebo Samuel had a great game, but also was involved in the backfield. And then for the Rams, just not, in my opinion, not patient enough with the run game. And maybe you got too entranced with getting Odell involved early, and then had the unfortunate screenplay where Higbee off his hands right into Jimmy Ward's hands, pick six, and then from there on out it was tough sledding for the Rams. But good, desperate win for the 49ers, their first home win this season. Ironically, right after we were talking about what are they going to do if the season's a failure, they respond, but we'll see if they can keep it up. But a good win for them, and tough loss for the Rams. But John, what were your thoughts in regards to this one?
First off, I think the tough part for the Rams, they loved adding Odell initially because I think he could just sort of fill in for what Van Jefferson had been doing, and that's no shot at Van Jefferson, but Odell was definitely an upgrade from him, and he could play off of Cup and Woods and be the deep threat, make some stuff happen after the catch. And then when Woods got hurt, that really I think just threw a wrench in everything. First off, they had to rush Odell into the game plan when he was really only there for like 2 days before he, had to play. And so I wouldn't overreact to like Odell's performance specifically. And then maybe even just the Rams offense as a whole, because when you lose a guy as important Robert Woods, that definitely sucks. But I will say, I mean, Kyle Shanahan, for the most part, during him and McVay's tenures, has really owned the Rams. And
I think it's
I
five
thought that,
straight that
yeah,
they've beaten the Rams.
I thought that this would be the year that would change because the Rams have just looked really good, and the pieces they've added, they've gone all in. But since they've gone all in, they've lost their last two games against the Titans and now the Niners. So I don't know. I feel like the Rams starting to show some holes. I think this is a crucial point for McVay of, okay, can we adjust? Can we get ready? Because, maybe I don't know what their schedule is looking like moving forward. I'm actually going to
They have
try
a
and
bye
pull
week
it up.
next week, so they could pull a Buccaneers where they figure it
Yeah,
out during the bye week and then finish the season strong and ride that momentum in the playoffs.
that does help. And I will say they don't really have like an easy stretch after that. They got the Packers, Jaguars is an easy
Right.
one, but then
So
the
so we have to see them
Cardinals.
after the bye week.
Yeah,
That's
y'all
gonna
got
be
to see
fun.
them. So Packers are in there, Cardinals, then to finish off the year, Seahawks, Vikings, Ravens, and Niners again. All those teams in there are vying for potential playoff spots. So don't have really an easy stretch. But regardless, I don't know. I feel like I feel like the Wolves are hungry and circling the Rams right now. Of okay, we're starting to see that other teams are beating them, and they're beating them in convincing fashion. They're stopping this high octane offense that everybody expected. McVay with no Jared Goff and finally a good quarterback that he'd be unstoppable, but other teams are showing how to stop it. So I think this is a crucial point for the Rams if they're especially coming off a bye week, that they need to respond when they do play the Packers, and that's a tough game to do it. But I think you got to put the league on notice after losing two games that I feel they should have won.
And I think too, especially this game, will be interesting going forward because I know they had success against Tampa, but that don't have the biggest defensive line, and that's what San Francisco. They just said we're gonna just out physical you the entire game. We know you're a very fast team, but we're not. So we're not gonna play into that. We're just gonna overpower you in trenches and follow the old saying. Big people don't get smaller, but fast people can get slower. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see because you have the Green Bay's. We'll probably want to run the ball. Tampa Bay, I imagine, will be more patient in the playoffs. And then, yeah, if they have to face a Niner team or a Minnesota team in the wild card,
I mean,
it'll be a
honestly,
tough matchup.
look at the gauntlet of who's vying for the NFC playoffs, right? The Packers, they have Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, both can just run it, down your throat. They have the Buccaneers, and we've seen in previous games that they'll rely on Leonard Fournette, especially in last year's playoffs. They did it, so they could do it. The Cowboys, Zeke and
Yeah,
Tony Pollard,
Cowboys.
they'll run the ball.
Arizona, we already beat them and had
Arizona,
success.
Kyler Murray, James Conner, Chase Evans, all of them will run the ball. If the Panthers make it, Christian McCaffrey, the Vikings, Dalvin Cook, like
Saints.
the Saints with Alvin Kamara, the Niners with Elijah Mitchell and all their guys. Like there's a lot of teams in the NFC that will commit to running the ball, like you said, if their defensive line proves that they can't stop it.
So yeah, that'll be interesting to see if they can adjust to that going forward. So that is the reactions for week